Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Princess Peach Showtime. So, the next level is a Cowgirl level, and we'll be finishing off the Cowgirl trio of levels in this part. So, huzzah for that. So, the way the structure works is that you have two levels of, you have like one introductory level, one intermediate level, and then you kind of have like the short level where you save the actor who's supposed to embody
The true
that.
test.
Yeah.
And the Gex comparisons just keep piling up.
Oh, is Gex like that?
Gex 2 specifically, as you opened up different parts of the hub world, you would get steadily more difficult iterations on themes you had already played.
Oh, I see. That's cool. I played like some Gex when I was young, so I have some memories of it, but I never got super far in. That was like childhood era of treating video games just like toys and not really trying to beat it.
I mean, to be fair, a lot of the times when I was a kid especially, I often found myself playing a game and then starting it over from the beginning over and over, so I would never finish a game for that specific reason.
I would do the same thing. Mostly because I was a coward and particularly things scared me. So I would just play, the easy / non-threatening portions of the game and be like, all right, I'm done as soon as it gets scary. Echo the Dolphin comes to mind.
I think I've told this story before, but when I had the original Paper Mario N64, I couldn't figure out how to get to chapter 1, because you have to talk to what's his name behind the counter, and me being 7 years old, be thinking, well, what am I supposed to do? I talk to him and he won't do anything.
Right.
And so I replayed the prologue like 15 times over and over, because I kept on getting stuck. And I think I had to have my cousin tell me how to actually move forward in the game. So
Right, I see.
yeah, that was not my brightest moment, I fear.
We all have those, especially when we're younger, so I don't think there's anything like particularly odd about that.
I like the marionette horse on puppet strings, but I do want to say it does take a lot of skill to use something like a whip or a lasso from horseback. It is absurdly easy to end up with the whip or the lasso tied up in the horse's tail.
Not to mention that you have to throw those things a very specific way to do the stuff you want them to do in the first place.
Yeah.
So imagining doing that with like all the wind sounds like a nightmare, actually, as well.
I can't say I've ever thought of that, but now that you say that, I'm like, yeah, you know what? That does make sense.
It's doable.
Video games and movies make it look so easy. Like, you can just throw a thing and then you'll be able to swing off a tree or wrap somebody up. It's like, no, and then you try it and then it's like, oh.
I'm pretty sure swinging off of trees is one of those places where pop culture takes a liberty with what you can actually do with a thing. But,
I read something about it once. It's like, you can do it, but without specifically like a grappling hook on it, it's not as fluid as in movies, because like you have to throw the thing, get it on, make sure that it's tight, and it takes like 4 or 5 minutes just to do it, as opposed to, in a video game you're like, wee,
yeah. Yeah, on the subject of how much skill it takes to do this kind of stuff, though, did you know that, like, what's her name? Michelle Pfeiffer actually trained with the whip so that she didn't need a double to do that for Catwoman and Batman Returns.
Really?
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, she actually did the mannequin sequence on her first try.
Wow.
So, yeah, they just said, okay, that's good.
Dang.
That's crazy.
That's pretty awesome, actually. I love that.
The same guy who trained her actually trained Harrison Ford for at least one of the Indiana Jones movies, one of the more recent ones.
I'm not surprised that Hollywood has a whip guy, now that I'm thinking about it.
Well, it's more like he's a whip guy on his own and is occasionally contracted by Hollywood to help with the whips.
That sounds like such a specific skill.
Well, also swords. What's his name? Anthony DeLongis. He knows how to use quite a few weapons, but he's most famous for his style with the whip.
I know
that's cool.
I know the guy who played Darth Maul in episode 1. The actual actor is the actual stunt guy who knows how to fight with the double-bladed end, and so that's why he doesn't speak very much.
Yeah.
Oh, what's his name? Because he was also who's its face in the X-Men movies, the frog guy.
Although another tidbit about Phantom Menace specifically is that what's the name of the actor who plays Qui-Gon Jinn?
Liam Neeson.
Yeah, Liam Neeson was used to sword choreography from movies that use actual swords. So from what I hear, he kept swinging the lightsaber too hard. So
Oh no.
That makes sense considering, like, if we're thinking about Star Wars realistically for a second, always like a fantastic pastime that never goes poorly ever. I can imagine that many, Jedi in training swung their lightsaber so hard, and the thing's relatively light, so they just like chuck it, and then it falls down a cliff.
I know a problem the filmmakers for Star Wars used to have for like Obi-Wan and a few others was that they kept making the vooing vooing noises when they were swinging the swords.
like verbally, like
yeah.
Listen,
wait, that's really cute.
How many of us have taken like a paper towel tube or a broomstick and done boom 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 noises?
I was super obnoxious with it. I would go boom 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 and hit people with it. So I was that child.
I don't need to do that shit anymore because I have like an actual like working stunt lightsaber now. It's a cheap one. It's a cheap ass one that I got it for a budget, but it's cool. It's cool stuff. It makes the sounds for you, and there are all kinds of different versions of the lightsaber sound font.
Whoa, that's cool.
Do the different lightsabers sound different? Like...
yeah, it's the kind of thing that you often wouldn't notice unless you were really paying attention, but then there are the lightsabers that sound a lot different, like Kylo Ren's and stuff.
Oh, well, that one makes sense, because it also looks so different as well, but... I wouldn't think that, like, Anakin and Obi-Wan's sabers sounded different.
I mean, I was about to mention, for some reason, in the sequel trilogy, Anakin's lightsaber sounds different than he used to. Like, noticeably so. Like, they just completely redid the sounds for it. And
maybe when they eventually explain how a random woman on a boonies planet got the lightsaber, they'll explain why it sounds different.
Why do you have it? That's not important right now. It's like... But I asked you a question, lady.
I think they probably explained that in one of the Marvel comics.
I wouldn't be surprised if they did, but yeah.
I mean, that lightsaber already popped back into the old Legends continuity as a surprise thing that shows up. It did make more sense there because it was being stored in the Emperor's vault on a what is it, Wayland? The planet, the planet. What's his name? Yoris Sabayoth comes from.
But, like, so the last time we see it in the original trilogy, right? This is the nerdiest conversation we've had on this channel. Like, it gets dropped into Cloud City on the bottom.
Yeah.
Like, isn't that, like, a several mile drop? Wouldn't it just break when it lands?
Well, I mean, that depends on how it lands, but, physics are strange with that sort of thing.
Oh god, I forgot about. It's been a week since we've done videos. I forgot about how bad this loading screen is.
Yeah.
It's also possible that it could have been repaired. I mean, that's what happens when it gets split in half at the end of episode 8. It just comes back in the next movie, shiny and good as new. Wonderful.
Somehow the lightsaber has been repaired. Oh no! Oh rats! It's the trolley problem.
Well, I mean, the most important part was the crystal, and we could see, like, visually see at the end of episode 8 that was still fine.
Alright, guys, it's an ethical dilemma. We can either save the person on this side of the trolley tracks, or we can go and get some ice cream. What do we choose?
I don't know. Ice cream is pretty tempting, man.
I
I could
know.
go for a good ice cream right now.
Same, bruh.
Can the person we're saving make ice cream? Because that'll kind of factor
does
in.
that? Yeah, that. Masae, have you ever watched The Good Place?
No, I haven't.
Okay, I went on a rant about The Good Place in a different commentary, but the short version is it's a sitcom. I think it's on Hulu now, where the premise is that a woman gets put into heaven by accident when she was supposed to go to hell. And so she's trying to study philosophy so she can be a good enough person to not get kicked out. And one of the episodes talks about the trolley problem, and their thought process was, okay, so who do you save on the trolley problem? Do you save Santa Claus or 12 starving orphans? And it's very, very funny. You should watch The Good Place. I love that show.
Honestly, that premise sounds amazing, so I'm kind of down.
Which version of Santa Claus are we talking about? Like the Marvel and DC versions of Santa, who is basically a super god?
I mean, I feel like most versions of Santa need to be a super god to live for centuries at least, and put up with the the superhuman task that he's been assigned, which is why he needs so much milk and cookies. Like the caloric burn he's been going through, it's got to be through the roof, or through the chimney, I guess.
Oh, I love gameplay moments where you're like on top of a carriage just being pulled around by a horse.
I have to say I can't really hear the melody for the music too well, but I have to say that the vibe has been perfect for this, because it sounds right out of a John Wayne Western.
Yeah, they really nailed the audio, honestly. I feel like that's one of the strengths of how they themed each of these levels, is that all of the audio and all of the music has really felt so spot on just for the theming and being, thematically similar to the things that they're parodying.
One thing I also appreciate is that I'm like 90% sure this is a real orchestra. Nintendo would like cheap out on this stuff even once they had the technology to have a full orchestra. A lot of the time, like a lot of Wii U games still use synthesized instruments, and even some early Switch games that they did use synthesized instruments. But
I remember that was a whole thing, particularly like back when Skyward Sword first was announced, because they were like, oh, it's gonna be a symphony, it's gonna be live music, and then it wasn't.
Oh really? Oh man.
Well, I don't think that they said it, but I think everyone was led to believe that it was, because for one, around that time we had the Zelda Symphony going around and doing shows, and also I think one of the early trailers had real live music without the synths and stuff. So when the game released, I remember a lot of people were just kind of bummed / upset that it was, standard Nintendo OST fare where it was all synthesized instruments, which at the end of the day, I didn't care. It still sounded good.
I mean, it's shocking to me, especially considering how grandiose Zelda tends to be. Like, that's the sort of soundtrack that benefits the most from an orchestra. Also considering that Mario Galaxy 1 had like half of its music orchestrated, and Mario Galaxy 2 I think it's almost all of it, and they even went and reorchestrated tracks from Galaxy 1 that didn't have orchestras before, like the Bee Kingdom track, I think, has a new recording with real instruments in it.
The thing is, like, getting a full orchestra to do your soundtrack is a hella expensive proposition. And
it absolutely is, for sure.
And as we advance further and further into the 2024s, every series that isn't Dragon Quest experiences diminishing returns with their orchestrated soundtracks, because every series that isn't Dragon Quest knows how to use better synthesized music.
Yeah, thank God HD3 remake is a full orchestra from the get-go. This is what happens when Koichi Sugiyama dies. They get to use the good version of the music the first time, and not like the third time they release the game. So,
or only in the Western version of the PS2 release and in no other version afterward.
Yep. Do you want the bonus content and the orchestral soundtrack? No, fuck you.
Don't forget the voice acting and the better UI. Ugh.